so many of us complain of burnout and exhaustion and anxiety and, issues with our relationships, our kids, work. And I truly believe at the core of all of that is our inability to focus and sustain it. And it's not our fault. It's our culture. It's our world. It's everything coming at us at all times. I think it's really important that we return and reclaim this aspect of what it means to be human, which means to reconnect with ourselves and each other in a focused way.
Whether you're looking for inspiration, guidance, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. This is Wisdom Stripes. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to take a moment to share something important. The views expressed by my guests are their own, and they may not necessarily reflect mine or those of this platform. My intention with every episode is to create a space where we can explore diverse perspectives, life experiences, and belief systems together. I truly believe that wisdom lives everywhere, and often we find it in the places we least expect, especially in those whose experiences and beliefs are very different from our own. Not every episode will challenge you, but some might, and that's okay. Growth often comes when we allow ourselves to step into discomfort and see the world through someone else's eyes. I also want to share something I heard recently from Oprah Winfrey that really struck a chord with me. She said at a commencement speech, "People all want to know one thing. Was that okay? Did you hear me? Do you see me? Did what I say mean anything to you?" My hope is that you will try to go out and have more face-to-face conversations with people you may disagree with, that you'll have the courage to look others in the eye and hear their point of view, and help make sure that the speed and distance and anonymity of our world doesn't cause us to lose our ability to stand in somebody else's shoes and recognize all that we share as a people. There has to be some way that this darkness can be banished with light. I couldn't agree more with those sentiments spoken by Oprah. These dialogues aren't always easy, but they are so important. My hope is that this episode and all the episodes I share will inspire you to listen a little more closely, reflect a little more deeply, and keep showing up for the conversations that matter most. Thank you for being here with me. It means so much to me that you're part of this journey. Let's get started. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Wisdom Stripes. I'm Meg Tuohey, and today's episode is one you will not want to miss. We are diving into resilience, attention, and what it truly takes to navigate the modern world with clarity, purpose, and strength. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by distractions or struggled to stay grounded in what matters most, this conversation is for you. Our guest today is Dr. Zelana Montminy, a leading behavioral scientist and acclaimed author, and one of Maria Shriver's architects of change. Dr. Montminy uses her experience in mental health, human potential, and emotional well-being to help people and organizations rewire how they engage with today's increasingly chaotic world. Her first book, 21 Days to Resilience, offered a powerful science-backed path to building mental strength. Now with her upcoming book, Finding Focus, Owning Your Attention in the Age of Distraction, she offers a timely roadmap for protecting our most precious resource, our time. Dr. Montminy's work blends cutting-edge research with practical tools and personal wisdom, all aimed at helping us reconnect with ourselves and the world in a more intentional way. In this episode, we'll explore how to build true resilience, where our attention is being stolen, and what it looks like to live a values-driven life, even in the noise. This is Wisdom Stripes, your no-nonsense, fierce fairy godmothers, turning pain and confusion into clarity and confidence. Dr. Zelana, it is truly a treat having you join us today. We always start with the same question for our guests. What wisdom would you like a listener to come away with today?
Well, I guess the wisdom that, most is directly reflected in the work that I do and what I've come to understand is that I've come to see focus not as a productivity hack, but sort of as a return to ourselves, a reclaiming of sorts. And the moments that revealed this to me most clearly weren't the ones where I seemed to be the most hectic and running around and unfocused, but they were the ones that sort of stirred a lot within me and cracked something open, um, where I found a lot more clarity. So I think that's sort of the crux of it.
And that is got my full attention. Returning to self, not a productivity hack. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I mean, I think everybody thinks of focus as um, something that we have to really work hard to attain, and it's really more about moving beyond distractions and cultivating clarity and purpose. It's not just a skill that we have to work at. It's almost a mindset. Um, and so I think, our most valuable resource is not our time, it's our attention. And so I think so much of our attention has been fragmented purposefully. And this is about reclaiming our power to be intentional about what we engage with.
So I am following and really enjoying this conversation. The thing that is really on my mind is attention being the most valuable asset we have, perhaps alongside time. Time and attention to me feel similar but quite different. Help me understand the fragment that you speak of, and help me understand what you understand the antidote to be.
Well, we are constantly task switching and living in multiple different realities. We have the physical world, the digital world, and somewhere in between that we're juggling. And so that's what I mean when I talk about being fragmented constantly. Very few of us can sustain attention and prioritize. Everything feels urgent, everything feels overwhelming. Um, and that's what I talk about, what I mean when I say fragmented.
And so let's start unpacking why it's important to have a holistic version or of your attention. What are the benefits of being able to have less fragmented attention?
Well, I mean, it's having less fragmented attention and claiming our focus back is I think at the core of so many of our issues. I think the relentless pull of notifications and the cultural noise and our constant demands um, is really eroding not just our time, but our relationships and our mental health and our ability to really function and thrive. So I think, you know, taking a holistic approach and using tools that I talk about in the book, like mindfulness and movement and restorative breaks and reconnecting socially with people on a deeper level, I show people how to essentially train your attention and come back to that feeling that we all sort of have forgotten about what it feels like to really be in the myriad of moments that we have throughout the day.
So I can appreciate how the digital age has wrecked or provided us with such scattered focus. I am curious about your research or your understanding around attention and how being able to be present or experience the moment over a prolonged period of time is beneficial for a human experience.
Well, it's everything. It's how we regulate our nervous system. It's how we reconnect with each other and recalibrate. It's how we connect with ourselves. If we can't sustain attention on things that matter, which we often cannot, then we're just sort of scrambling, and it's leaving us breathless and ill. I mean, we're all, so many of us complain of burnout and exhaustion and anxiety and issues with our relationships, our kids, work. And I truly believe at the core of all of that is our inability to focus and sustain it. And it's not our fault. It's our culture. It's our world. It's everything coming at us at all times. And so, I think it's really important that we return and reclaim this aspect of what it means to be human, which means to reconnect with ourselves and each other in a focused way. And so, I think neurologically we've just become so accustomed to the quick hits and the quick, this and everything, a text message, a DM, it's just nonstop. And our kids talking to us and the 15 things we said yes to. And it's all happening all at once. And we're having a really hard time, so many of us, figuring out what do we prioritize? What do we really want to do? How do we respond to all this instead of react?
One of the words you used in this great conversation was the word cannot. We cannot maintain our focus. I wonder how much of that is choice versus skill, or is it a contribution that I haven't named? Where do we find the cannot part of this?
That's a great question, and I think we find it in our desensitization to sitting with discomfort. So we turn to a device as a pacifier for discomfort. We turn to being busy as a shield and mask for really sitting with ourselves and confronting whatever we're feeling or dealing with. So we've learned to just stay on the treadmill as fast as possible to escape everything else that would actually kind of hurt or be uncomfortable to work through. But in skipping that part, we've negated so much of the human experience and what it means to thrive and fully feel. We're like automatons, just going. And so we cannot means that sort of our brain is now trained to resist the discomfort of, conversations we probably don't really want to have with our spouse. So we grab our phone and start buying groceries while binge watching Netflix. And then, our kids are talking to us about things, but we're, checking emails at the same time. And it's just how we've trained ourselves to escape things. Also, I think that's sort of the missing piece. And I also think that so much of this world now is engineered to distract us and commodifies our attention and uses it to the company's advantages, but has taken it away from us in a sense. And so that's sort of where I'm coming at with the cannot.
Thank you for clarifying that,
and we have to train that back. I do think it is a skill, by the way. I do think so for sure, but it also is a feeling. It's getting back in touch with the feeling of focus and the feeling of discomfort and acknowledging the power in that and reclaiming, every aspect of being human.
I'm going to do a little story, but I promise it links to this, and it is going to be a question. Years and years ago, when my children were little, I was reading books that were republished, but were really from the 50s and 60s for children. And they were republished into, the time period 40, 50 years later. And there's this story about the dad taking the children to the park, and he opens a newspaper while they play around him. And I couldn't help but notice that even before we had digital devices, we still had distractions. We still had ways to zone out around our children or from our life. And a newspaper was considered it has multiple different meanings and uses, but also it does the same thing. So I feel like we as humans have always kind of wanted to escape the moment based on just that one example. And so why do you think it is so uncomfortable that we need to take a break from being human?
Well, I think so. That's a multi-pronged question. I do want to address the what you said about distraction. Distraction is not the enemy. Distraction is a powerful tool. And yes, we do need breaks. We can't always engage with our children. I don't think that's healthy either. I think it's beautiful to read a book or the paper while your kid is playing or whatever it is. So it's the problem is the way in which we're distracted and the way in which our brain is experiencing these quick dopamine hits and quick pleasure instead of sustained pleasure, and what we're training ourselves to do and how we zone out. That's the problem. But going back to just distraction in general and And sorry, what was sort of the ending question on that one? Because I was thinking about the distraction piece and wanted to make sure I tackle that.
I think it's
that it's not, it's not bad to be distracted. It's the way in which we're distracted that's the problem. Oh, and why do we escape being human? I mean, listen, I think discomfort doesn't feel good, right? And so throughout human history, we've always sort of not wanted to sit with uncomfortable feelings. But I think that culturally, um, these days we are so numb and so far from we have so many other ways to distract ourselves that are so much more alluring and addicting. So we don't have to sit with discomfort. So why would we? And so, and my response to that and argument to that is we have to sit with discomfort on some level, on some occasion, again, not all the time, in order to experience the full array of our feelings and to confront issues and to work through problems and to problem solve and to move through things. We can't tuck it all away because at some point it's going to come out in different ways, in bigger ways, and domino to everyone we love and care about.
So we're seeing really, if we could distill it into a broad category, we're looking at it as an avoidance coping technique or mechanism. We are avoiding the experience of living in the human suit and the discomfort that comes from being available in reasonable periods of time instead of the quick hits. So it's not about not resting. It is about the balance of, am I quick, dopamine, busy, rushing to get the things done? Or am I living a human experience in the full capacity of that, which does include resting and reading a newspaper or reading a book, for example? Have I got that right?
Yes, exactly. And, we're exhausted from being everywhere and nowhere at once. Like even when we're escaping and doing all these different things, we still come home tired. It's just, we've sort of normalized this crisis of disconnection. And so what I'm offering with this book is a way back to ourselves in a world that has really sort of hijacked our attention and our ability to connect with each other. People are really desperate to reconnect. You can see that in the myriad of connections we have more than ever before. We are actually incredibly lonely, so much more lonely than other generations, research shows. And so it's a way to reclaim our most precious resource, which I believe to be our attention.
So attention is sort of the container that lots of other pieces sit in. So it is the human experience, the ability to tolerate the distress of being human, the ability to downregulate instead of finding that dopamine hit. And when we are able to manage that in this modern world that is moving at a rapid rate, and the pull is to kind of get swept up in it and be carried along by it, what I'm hearing is it is a useful thing to be able to row your own boat and to be able to be aware of where your attention is and make mindful choices.
That's right.
Okay. So if I am a listener who is listening to this going, oh my gosh, okay, I can see that this is something that I could make some different choices about. What are some of the ways that I can find my focus or bring back that attentional choice? Where am I placing my choice for my attention today?
Well, you'd have to read the book. But yes, I mean, some of those things that I talk about, and I try not to give too many sort of hacks and homework because I believe that that's also exhausting us and our attention. There's so many things that we should be doing, and yet we can't get to any of them. And it's not only exhausting us, but it's making us feel ashamed. And like we're missing something when in reality, we're just missing the fundamentals. And so that brings me to, the most basic of all of this in reclaiming our attention and our focus is really starts at the ground level, which is starting in the basics. You cannot maximize your mental and physical health without actually sleeping well and focusing on nutrition and hydrating and doing all the fundamental things that sustain our body physically. So that's actually a piece that, even though, I'm not a clinical nutritionist or anything like that, but I do see so often in the work that I do that people are doing everything right, but they still can't really hold on to it. And it's like, oh, when they learn to master, the sleep habits and all the other pieces that, the fundamentals, they're like, okay, that made the actual final, a bit better. But so there's that piece. And then I also talk a lot about how to rest effectively and efficiently, how to take breaks, because most people, when they take breaks, they're just sort of scrolling through their phone or they're binge watching something or triple screening or, doing something that still requires their brain to sustain focus and their attention on different aspects. And it's exhausting neurologically. So I really talk about restorative breaks in order to then go back to a task. We can't really focus for extended periods of time, by the way. We're not set up to do that, and that's fine. But, when you do take those breaks, don't just grab your phone or binge watch YouTube cat videos. You know what I mean? Like, try to really plug out of whatever you're doing without a device, even for a few minutes, is super restorative and ideally in some sort of natural setting. So even seeing houseplants or greenery of some sort, if you can't get outside, is fantastic and recalibrates the brain. So things like that are really important to do. And then time blocking is really effective tool. So when you're looking at, your work or your calendar or whatever it is you're doing in your day, really carving out those moments that require sustained attention in advance to prepare yourself for those moments can be really effective. I mean, I talk about a lot of different things in the book, but I think, those are sort of the meat and potatoes, the nitty gritty of it all. And a big piece of it too is figuring out what your priorities are, like based on sort of not goals at all, but just more of like what your purpose, like what lights you up. What are you really doing? What sustains you? What are you working toward? And then from that, you can figure out what is actually a priority versus what just feels urgent because it's someone else's emergency or someone else is kind of breathing over you. Because that's the problem too these days, is everything just feels like it needs to get done immediately.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. You and I were talking a little bit before we started recording about wisdom stripes and heart print, this concept that I use. And I also have a book coming out about it as well, where we all kind of have this unique heart print of who we are and who we might grow into and be able to bloom into over the course of our life, and how we do these kind of quests to make sense of those things that light us up, those things that give us those shimmery sparkles that show us, hey, this is something that's important to me. And as you and I are talking, I can't help but notice that those two things kind of go hand in glove. In order for us to have attention back that's ours, we can channel it into things that are actually really good for us, like a towards move to our heart print, that sense of, I have 24 hours in a day. How much of that time or attentional capacity am I investing into something that feels good, that lights me up, that feels like a purpose, that feels like something that is going to be my legacy when I leave this beautiful planet, when my journey comes to an end? How will I know that I've led a good life? Well, it's about where I put my attention and how that relates to my heart print. And as we're talking, I can see that connection more and more clearly. Is that something that you agree with? Would you challenge or add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a lovely connection. I think it's also hard to assume that, everything we do can fulfill purpose and intention. There's so much minutia that we still have to do that may not be fulfilling, right? So I think it's really about perspective and shifting narratives for ourselves and, thinking through things perhaps in a different way. The stuff that we find to be tedious might actually be, leading you toward a specific something, right? Or might be training you for something, or might be giving you a feeling of discomfort that's actually really beneficial. So there's always some sort of silver lining, and sometimes things aren't going to be great and purposeful, and that's okay too. And just to move on from that without really sitting in that feeling is important.
Oh, I could not agree more. And just to add to this thing you and I are building together, we are grown-ups and we are in the thick of being full functioning adults with responsibilities for dependents and also work and often with other caring related duties. We have things we need to do. And I think what I'm trying to carve out with that heart print is that's often where we get our energy and the payoff if we can spend some time in that most days. That is probably a good place to practice your attention whilst also feeling really good about yourself in the thick of being a grown up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can all strive toward, you
Me
know.
too. So, looking ahead, how do you envision the conversation around attention and mental health evolving over the next decade? You and I just did a bit around the positive parts about being able to put attention with your heart print and have that sense of relief or shimmery, sparkly, good feeling about investing in those ways. I imagine, though, there's a more negative or harder conversation that there is from an attentional point of view when it's linked to mental health outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, I hope to be at the forefront of that change, of that narrative shift. I think people are just starting to realize that our attention is in a massive crisis. I think that I think that people are yearning for something. I can sense just sort of the ethos that everyone is struggling deeply and grieving something, whether it's a person or a place, they're grieving change or the loss of something or realignment in some sense. And it's harder these days, it seems, um, than in previous years or generations. From what I can sense. And it doesn't have to do with, the big global things necessarily, but what it does have to do is our brain isn't meant to sustain so much consistent input and content. We grew up like humans are supposed to be in communities, and yes, we know things about each other and our friends and our families and sort of connections, but we're not supposed to be getting constant text messages and news flow and this is happening here and this is happening there. And so our empathy reserves are really wearing thin, and neurologically it's just too much, right? And so on top of that, all these different worlds and ways of functioning and roles that we have that we are juggling, it's a lot. So I think people are starting to realize how important our attention is and prioritizing the need to recalibrate and to focus.
There's a sentence you said just then that had me really stop and listen very intently. And it was the empathy reserves are wearing thin. I think that is,
Mhm.
let's talk about that for a minute. That feels very relatable.
Yeah, I mean we're not meant to, know about what's all, the flooding in 17 different countries and the fire that also tore down the community next door and, Susie's divorce and this and these celebrities that are doing this. And it's just so much information all the time. And that doesn't mean we don't care. We are just completely shut down. So now we're just numb. It's not even about activism or not activism. It's like we don't even want to hear it anymore. People are, someone gets shot, someone's dying. I mean, it's so hard for us to process now because it's just so much. And neurologically, we shut down when that happens, and that's really what I'm seeing, and people are starting to feel ashamed about it. I'm hearing a lot of conversation and rhetoric from clients also just like, "Oh, yeah, so a bomb went off, yeah, well," it's like it doesn't even matter anymore. And so the way in which we are human is changing because to be human is also to feel for others. And that's shifting a lot.
Hey there, Meg Tuohey here with a quick and exciting announcement. As a psychologist, coach, and founder of the Wisdom Lab, I've had the privilege of helping thousands of individuals break free from the vicious cycles holding them back and tap into their infinite inner wisdom. If you're tired of feeling unheard, unseen, and stuck in the same old struggles, the Wisdom Lab is the breakthrough you've been yearning for. This on-demand program guides you through a powerful process to shatter emotional barriers, overcome deep-rooted blocks, and experience the profound transformation you deserve. In just 4 hours, you'll gain the tools and insights to revolutionize your life from the inside out. Want to learn more? Click or tap the link in the show notes for all the details. Okay, now back to the episode. So, what I am contemplating is growing up with my grandparents in particular. So again, they're from born in the 1930s. They used to read the paper in the morning, cover to cover, and watch the news at night. And the day was spent with community. My grandmother didn't drive, so she would walk to the shops and do the marketing and walk home again. And my grandfather would work and my grandmother didn't. And so he would go to work and then come back. And they had challenges. It's not at all, I'm not painting a perfect, rosy past, but I can't help but notice.
Everybody had,
right?
yeah.
I can't help but notice the source of global information was twice a day, and the rest of the day was local. It was family, it was community, and it was a big break. We do not have that experience anymore. And therein lies the transition.
No, and not only that, we got news and information globally, but it was also given to us in a very different way. Right now, it's short form content that's meant to be gripping. It's meant to be like sort of negative or the worst of whatever, and it's meant to, and it's also given in a million different ways and a million different perspectives. And the truth, we don't even trust truth. We don't even know that anymore as a human. So we're also checking sources. So not only are we ingesting information, but then we're also now trained to question the information, how we got it. Is it true? Is it AI? Is it real? It's so much for us. And imagine only how our kids feel, right? Because their brain is still developing all of these fundamental functions and they're not even given a chance. So it's a lot. And it's something that's also really eroding our capacity and our attention.
What is one practical way that somebody could be more mindful to allow, in terms of being able to make a positive change in the attentional reclaiming?
In one specific area, or do you mean generally?
I think let's go general. So what's one general way that somebody could reclaim some of their attention? Just a very simple, straightforward choice point, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it does start with choice. It starts with an intention, not just attention, but intention. And I think that starts with realizing, where are you giving it away? What are the moments in which you feel most distracted throughout the day? Or when do you find your attention struggling the most? And I bet you, for most people, it's not when they're the busiest. It's when they're the most uncomfortable or tired or depleted. And so I think we've really confused attention, because it's not just about distraction. It's really comes from a very emotional place. And so I would encourage everyone to first, oh, go ahead. No, I was just saying, I would encourage everyone to first really look at where and when are they most distracted, and then work from there to try to recapture something and figure that out. Is it when my spouse comes home and wants to talk about something? Is it when everyone's home and talking at me at the same time? Well, that's nervous system regulation. That's feeling exhausted. Is it also perhaps not feeling like you're being seen for all the mental and emotional labor that you do. It's like there's so many layers there, right? And so there's a lot to kind of think through and unpack before you even begin to try to reclaim attention. And that's what I mean when I say this isn't about productivity hacks. This is much deeper. This is a systematic human reprogramming of how we are taught to function and how we it's like a knee-jerk reaction. But being human shouldn't be reactive. It should be responsive. We should be responding to our circumstances in our world, not just reacting consistently. And that's where we're just so depleted and exhausted.
I have two things on my mind. The first is it feels like a new frontier for human evolution that we're talking about. Because I gave the past experience conversation just before about the news twice a day and then community in the middle. That generation is also not known for high levels of attunement or emotional intelligence or the ability to process experiences either. That generation is not known for that. We have now built a lot of that ability, and we are also still avoiding being in the human suit. So I feel like we're actually talking about a new frontier where we bring those two things together and we evolve to the next level, not to gamify this, but this sounds like another level of what the humans are going to do next. What do you think?
I think that's partly true. I mean, but I think some of this is also just going back to fundamentals. I think we've gone so astray on so many things. I think our brain is having a hard time sort of catching up to it all. I think, innovation is phenomenal and fantastic and exciting, but I also think that it happens faster than we can shift sometimes. And this isn't just when TVs started or computers came about and we had to change how we function. We're actually neurologically trying to keep up to things that are shifting the way in which we connect. And that's the fundamental issue, because we really need to connect with ourselves and each other in order to thrive as human beings. That's what sort of humanity, the foundational elements of staying emotionally well. And we've lost a lot of that. And I think we just have to be very careful. I think there's extremes, right? Like we also went through a period of extremes on the emotional front and being so emotionally attuned and maybe too emotionally attuned, dare I say. And now I think there's a way in which, to blend. And then there's a happy medium to that where we can still feel mentally and emotionally well while also being innovative and moving forward.
I mean, that sounds like a lovely new frontier and a lovely place to live, don't you think? Yeah, I'd like to live there. I'd like my friends and loved ones and community to live there. That sounds amazing. Yeah. Now, a little while ago, you talked about the depletion of energy. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you is that you have shared that grief or depletion can hijack focus and pull you into survival mode. Was there a specific moment that became a turning point, perhaps in your healing process? Because really, this is about your wisdom that you've channeled into a book to serve all of us. But this is hard earned and hard won, and your knowledge comes from figuring it out and now sharing it. Might you tell us about the intersection here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, listen, I think one of the most life-changing sort of periods in my life came after I had already written the book. But I think, we were victims of the Palisades fire in Los Angeles, and the fire completely destroyed our entire community, our kids' schools, dance studios, dentists, the whole shebang. And that happened in January of this year. And what I realized through that is really about that it's not just the physical destruction that is the worst of it. It's sort of the rupture of rhythms. And that's sort of relatable to anyone who's lost anything, right? And the collapse of something familiar. So whether you've lost a relationship or a person or a thing or whatever it is. But when people have lost their homes and their schools and everything connected to it, you lose your sense of safety and what anchors you during grief. And so we weren't just grieving, we lost the anchors that sort of keep us somewhat held. And so, I think when anyone experiences any kind of loss, and again, I'm not just saying it has to be a really traumatic loss. It can also be, you thought you were going to get this job and you didn't, or you thought you were going to date this person and you're not, things like that. But it's your brain sort of goes obviously into survival mode. And I was just personally so scattered. And it wasn't just emotionally, it was like you're neurologically just completely, you can't hold a thought. I couldn't finish a sentence. And I think grief really sort of scrambles us in a lot of ways. And I think what the interesting piece is here, and the silver lining to anything lost, is that when you lose, there's this strange stillness that happens. And it's almost within the stillness that things sort of start to recalibrate, and it becomes incredibly clear what actually matters and what is really worth my attention, because you simply just don't have the capacity to attend to everything, right? So you sort of have to really choose where your attention flows. And that's sort of my takeaway from that, is that, even though I wrote the book before the fire, I now even more understand that focus really is not about force. It's about clarity in a way. It's about sort of honoring your nervous system in a way that really protects your inner life. And I think that's a big piece of that for me.
I feel there is such wisdom in that nuance. I'm so glad we got to have it as part of this conversation, because grief is one way of describing loss, but the neurological loss of anchor points and safety, and the combination of those two things, grief and safety, being disrupted, I think is one of those things we don't really name and talk about as humans. And yet we do have a lot of hard things in our everyday life. And I think we are relentlessly trying to shore up our safety. And in a changing economy, in a changing political and social and climate, environmental landscape, all of those things are combining for most of us. Most of us would have something we're grieving and also looking to add more safety. So it makes even more sense to me that we feel quite uncomfortable and we're looking to leave the human experience and do some cat memes on TikTok, on the clock, and just have a rest. And then I can imagine the slippery slope that takes us into doing that more and more and more and more, because it doesn't stop. The human suffering or challenge or context that is difficult to manage isn't stopping.
That's right. And we don't feel safe in our lives anymore, sadly. And we numb out, and then we get these quick dopamine hits in a way that our brain was never supposed to ingest. And so now it's just hijacked those neural networks, and we just want it more and more and more without doing anything to get there. So we've just become super lazy, but we're still getting this like surface fulfillment. And that's why so many of us feel lonely, because there's so much empty space that's unfulfilled. But our brain is tricked into thinking on a higher like surface level that, oh yeah, I'm getting pleasure. I'm seeing people. I mean, I remember having a conversation I do a lot of talks to organizations, and I had a group approach me, and I have so many friends. I talk to so many people. I have so many connections. I have a great community. And I said, oh, great. Tell me more about your community. Well, it's like this online, da, 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 da. Okay, cool. Do you ever see them in person? No. I said, well, how does that feel to you? Well, it's fine. It's like, I said, how well do you know them? Not a lot. Do you talk about anything other than, what do you talk about? I don't know. So it's like once you start digging, we realize that it's actually not connecting. They're connections, but that doesn't mean we're connecting. And that's what we need also to feel safe, because those human connections, I like to refer metaphorically as like a web of support. The connection creates the supportive web and the foundational safety. And when we lose that, which so many of us have, then, we can be in the same room physically with someone and just we're mostly somewhere else.
Yep. There's definitely research into that as well. We're only really available for connection, I think, like 6% of a day because we're in other places.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I heard you just talk about connection and the difference between connecting and being deeply in connection with somebody. And I just thought maybe it could be a useful conversation for us to operationalize what makes a successful connection. How do we know when we're actually really connecting with somebody versus, I think we got the surface level one, but let's talk about how to ease loneliness through connection. So what does that look like, feel like, sound like? How do I know if I've done the thing where I'm connecting with someone?
Honestly, you'll feel it. You will feel it. I mean, intuitively, chemically, you'll feel a sense of satisfaction that you just don't get in other ways. But it also looks like sharing something, exposing a part of yourself. Doesn't always have to be sad or traumatic, or just something deeper than a complaint. Even a complaint can be a shared connection, actually. But you'll feel the gravity of it and the reality of it, and it'll feel like something you want to go back to or not. But it's something real, and you'll feel it because so much of what we do isn't, and so it'll feel a bit different. It might even feel uncomfortable, actually.
Speaking of discomfort,
But you'll feel.
Yes. So then the trick is, if you're feeling discomfort, maybe it's just a bit unfamiliar. So maybe staying in that puddle of discomfort, we call it, getting some tolerance for the discomfort and the distress and just breathing through it and allowing yourself to experience it, and then recover your energy, because it might take some energy if you haven't been doing it a lot. Maybe that's another piece of this puzzle.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And seeing where it goes and really listening, really talking. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing about the Pacific Palisades fire. I wonder, how are you going now? We're sort of 8 or 9 months post that experience. How is your community? How are you? How is your family? What, if anything, can we do?
Oh, thank you for asking.
Can we do to help?
Oh, I mean, it's incredibly destabilizing. I have 3 young children. The community is distorted. Everyone's sort of scattered, trying to figure out next steps. It was a very, very tight-knit community. So the community itself is still strong and present, but we lack walls and spaces and physical connections. So I think we're still very much, so many of us from the Palisades and Eaton fires and all the other fires where you've lost things on such a huge scale, are in this really nebulous space of it's almost, I can metaphorically say, it's like kind of floating, like we're just in this nowhere land where it's like we're in rentals, or maybe some of us have purchased new homes in new places. It doesn't really feel like home, but yet we're starting to create some familiarity with repetition and new rhythms, and sometimes some of us feel almost guilty about that. So I think it's a weird place. We're still definitely grieving, all of us, I think, in different ways, but we're okay, and we're relying on the strength of our community, and others really have been extraordinary. And I think humanity has shown through in really magnificent, beautiful ways, in terms of kindness and generosity and thoughtfulness. So it's been a lot to navigate, but we originally were publishing my book in April and had to push the publication date to September because of it. So I'm grateful that we were able to do that. And now I can focus on getting this book to all of you in the way that I wanted to. And I'm excited for that. So I'm looking forward to that.
And we are looking forward to being able to access that book. While we're here, it feels like a good time to ask you, if we are wanting to buy your book, where do we go to find it?
Well, it's actually available now for pre-sale anywhere books are sold, and releases to the world September 16th. So if you pre-purchase the book, you'll get it September 16th. It'll be sent out to you. And anywhere, any bookstore. And I also have a website, drzelana.com, drzelana.com. And you can find everything about my book and everything I do on there. Or Instagram is also a place where I connect and have a strong community that I'm so grateful for. And you can find everything I'm doing there as well.
Thank you. And I guess maybe one of my last questions is, with your work impacting so many people, your work with Maria Shriver, your work outside of that, what or how do you ensure that your own well-being, your own personal development remains a priority, particularly in the face of doing a really big rebuild of your life post the fires?
I found a lot of healing in working with others. And a lot of what I write on, my website and the free resources I'm providing has been really cathartic for me and healing for me too. So I think I find healing in connecting with others. And I also, I do have to, I'm learning how to really be fully there in every single moment of life, because I know how fast and fleeting it all is, especially when you have little ones and you're in the thick of it all and the days are so long, but as they say, those years fly by. And so I'm really trying to cherish the busyness and the intensity of it all. I'm trying to look at silver linings and stay grateful, even though things feel very, very heavy, especially with the rebuilds and everything happening with the fire. But I try to plug out as much as I can, and yet also gift myself grace and remind myself I'm just a human, being. I'm a human being, and I don't do it right every time. And I think that that's something we all have to learn from. I mean, I do the work, I know the work, I teach the work, and yet here I am, and I mess up, and just to move forward and keep going.
I think that humanness is so important to recognize, because we are still human. We might still know the things we know and teach the things we teach, but we are still a student of life. And particularly in our own interest areas, we're still a student. So totally appreciate that. Okay, our last question, my friend, is, what piece of wisdom or advice would you like to leave our audience with today?
I mean, I think that was a nice way to end. I just think just gifting yourself grace. We're not always going to get it right, but I think, you're worth the effort it takes to reclaim yourself and your attention. I think your relationships will flourish from it. I think everything you do will flourish. And I think focus is such an important mechanism and birthright that we have just completely neglected. And it's time to get it back. And I hope you do, take some time for yourself to learn and to remind yourself what it's all about, and keep in touch and let me know how that goes. And hopefully together we'll start. This is how it starts, the movement of coming back to ourselves.
Yes, it's one of my favorite sentences that I use all the time. You and I have a lot of similarities. We do different things, similar foundation. And I just love that. There's nothing nicer than coming home to yourself, I think. And with that, I'd like to give a great big heartfelt thank you to Dr. Zelana Montminy for joining me today on Wisdom Stripes. We've explored the journey of reclaiming focus, navigating grief, and staying resilient in an age of constant distraction. We want to make sure you're finding value in these conversations, so make sure to let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can learn more about Dr. Montminy's work by visiting drzelana.com and follow her on Instagram at dr.zelana. To stay connected with me, follow at Meg Tuohey Official on Instagram. Thank you for tuning into Wisdom Stripes. I'm Meg Tuohey, and I hope you gained a little wisdom today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Wisdom Stripes. Follow me on at Meg Tuohey Official and leave a comment and review. I'm looking forward to meeting you here next time on Wisdom Stripes.